there are only two stitches in knitting, the knit and the purl, and it is the combination of the two that allows you to create patterns. So with only two stitches you can start making cables and all sorts of wonderful patterns. This is one I created myself for a kid's headband. Here you have the one we call the raspberry stitch that I made on a messy buntuk with a bit of ribbing at the bottom. And again, all it takes is to learn two stitches. So back to our needles. I'm going to quickly cast on a few stitches and we will learn how to knit. Okay, again I'm trying to not make it too tight. Thanks Freddie for helping. Alright, okay, few more. Remember, under, around and through, under, around and through. And I still have my long tail. So once you have your cast on, you want to make sure this is not the part you're going to use to knit. You want to use what we call the working yarn. So there are two different ways to hold your needles. The continental, and which is the throw, or the pick. So I throw, meaning I hold my yarn in my right hand and I throw it around. That's the knit. You could also learn the other way, meaning you hold your yarn in your left hand and you pick. Either way will give you the same results. You'll find one technique is easier for you than the other. I've always learned throwing, so I'm easier that way. It's just easier for me. So the way you knit, your working needle is going to go from the left to the right, front to back. So front to back, left to right. Throw around, and now as you push in, you're going to catch that thread and take it out. One more time. Front to back, left to right. Throw, and here I'm catching it. So this is a nice yarn because it shows you with all those different colors. So you have the original loop, underneath, around, and I catch it. Okay, again, around. The first row is always a little bit tighter, so that would be a bit of a struggle, especially for beginners. Don't get frustrated. Everything gets easier afterwards. All right, I've done my first row. I can turn around, and now I would do the same. Front to back, left to right. Around, and here you can see it's already much looser. Carry on. So already, by knowing only the knit, you know how to make the garter stitch, which will alternate. You'll see it makes a sort of ribbing because on this side you have the knit stitch. If you look at it from the other side, you have a purl. We'll get to that. We're just going to do one more row, left to right, front to back in diagonal, right? If you are just starting, I recommend using a thicker wool. Don't get yourself into what they call fingering weight or lacing. It's so thin, you won't get results really quickly, and I find when you're a beginner, you want to have something done right away. You want to see your progress go fast. If you start something with a yarn this thin, first of all, it will be very frustrating because it's so tiny. You'll have to work with smaller needles and you won't see the end of it. Whereas if you start with something a little bit thicker, it's way easier. Another thing I would recommend is to start with acrylic and something that is worsted, so like rolled. So you see it's not a fuzzy yarn, it's not something, you can definitely wear the thread, see where the thread is, and it's way easier to catch. If you start with a very beautiful yarn that would be fuzzy, kind of like this one actually, it gets way trickier because then you tend to have your needles go through the yarn itself and then you get stuck. So we'll do one more row of knit. Okay, front to back, left to right, around, catch it, and bring around, catch, and out. Maybe I'll show you again the other one, where you have your yarn in your other hand. So you would hold it almost like a crochet, and you keep front to back, left to right, but now you're going to catch it. So the way I do for this one is I have my middle finger I'm going to use to scrape. So it's here and out. Apparently, once you get really good at it, this is a very fast way to knit because obviously, as you can see, I'm never moving my hands, I'm never letting go of my needles. And once you get the groove going, you can go really, really fast. I'm not there with that technique. I would recommend, once you have one technique, just stick to it. And it's not really visible with this type of yarn, but you can see how you have in a bump, in a bump. So the bump would be your purl, and this nice and flat is your knit. Okay, so that's for the knit. I'll show you again. We can start talking about tension and how you want to make sure you always have the same tension. Tension is how tight or how loose you're knitting, and it is very personal. You cannot copy somebody else's tension. So that means if you start knitting and then I pick up your work to knit a few rows for you, you will see a drastic change between my hands and your hands. It will be quite obvious that somebody came and messed up your work. All right, that's your gardener stitch with the knit.